Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox. I'm so excited to feature today Tom Miller. Tom is an engineering and physics tutor who actually writes about different unconventional study methods at WTF Professor, where he helps math, science, and engineering students. Tom, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hey guys, how are you? My name's Tom, and like Steve said, I'm an engineer by profession, but I also tutor students in math and science. And my most recent project, WTF Professor, I'm really aimed at getting you guys access to the study techniques that I picked up when I was in high school and college that are going to help you learn more in less time and get better grades. And do everything you can to get where you want to go academically. So that's my story for what I'm doing right now. You want to get into some of the college admission story, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about what led you to create this website and what exactly are some of the stories related to those study methods, how you kind of came across them or put them together maybe?
Sure. Yeah, so I think I started out in high school and I really wasn't that engaged of a student. I was more of a kind of lazy junior who was more focused on playing basketball with my friends and video games and everything like that, instead of thinking about where I was going to go to college and what I was going to do for a profession. But I think junior year, some prodding from parents and teachers kind of got me thinking about college. And specifically, I had a math teacher and a physics teacher who kind of nurtured me a little bit and pushed me in the direction of maybe thinking about engineering. So that was kind of the turning point for me, where I started getting a little bit more interested in applying myself. So kind of moving on from there, my senior year, I kind of turned it on a little bit, got focused, did some AP classes, and then applied to schools. So I applied to a couple of different schools, but I ended up at University of Maryland. I went to high school in Maryland. All my friends were going there. They had a great engineering program. So once I decided to go there, I had at that point gotten pretty focused on doing well. So I sort of included that as part of my application. That helped me get in. And then once I was in, I started really focusing on trying to get good grades and sort of move up academically. And that's kind of that was the beginning of me starting to figure out some of these study methods. So one of the problems I ran into early was I was spending a lot of time trying to learn everything I could about all of my courses. And that was basically leaving no time for extracurriculars, no time for friends. I was spending a lot of weekends studying. And what I started to realize was that, I was spending a lot of time reading textbooks and taking notes and studying my notes and doing homework sets. But that wasn't necessarily all being covered on the exams. And as I went through the process of studying a lot for some exams and not really doing that well, I realized that there are certain things that you can do in your study process that are going to get you the grades that you want on your tests, that you can focus on, and then kind of deprioritize the other things, or maybe not spend as much time on them. So really that's what I'm dedicated to right now, is taking some of those practices, sharing them with the students that I work with, and trying to get better results.
For sure, Tom. Well, it sounds like you've really learned some valuable lessons there along the way. It seems like a lot of what this is coming back to is kind of how to work smarter, not harder, kind of bringing it back to that Pareto principle, like 80-20 rule. What studying, what material is going to give you the most bang for your buck? So that seems like really valuable information that you're putting out there. I'm really curious for a second, just to jump back a little bit earlier in your journey, where you kind of wanted to have fun with your friends, not study that hard, but still get good grades. And it seems like, I think you mentioned senior year is when you kind of turned it around a little bit. You mentioned something about like a teacher who kind of played a mentoring role. that helped you to make that switch. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. So thankfully, I went to a high school here in Maryland that had a really good math department. And so I had one teacher who I took pre-calculus with, and then subsequently took 2 more calculus classes with. And he was kind of an integral part of sort of fostering my interest in math and science. So I think I lucked out there because sort of coming into it, I think I had a little bit of a natural inclination for math, but it really didn't interest me too much. So I think that's probably the case for a lot of students in high school, is like math is just kind of a necessary evil, something you have to get through that you may not understand how it could apply to anything in the future. So it's hard to stay motivated. But what this teacher kind of convinced me of is that once you get sort of the core math principles under your belt, you can do a lot with it. So he sold me on the idea of understanding what math does and how manipulating numbers can do things in the real world can sort of lead you to building awesome things as an engineer, or becoming a scientist and making discoveries that impact the world. So I think fostering that sense of a longer term view. I'm no longer just thinking about having to go home and do my homework instead of playing with my friends. I started thinking a little bit about like how cool it would be to go and design cars, or like work on airplanes and do things like that. So I think he really helped me in that way. He convinced me to sign up for the AP courses and convinced me to put in the work to study for the AP tests, which I think helped continue to sort of keep my confidence up. So I know not everybody is going to have necessarily an awesome teacher like that, but I think you can kind of pull away some takeaways from that. One of the things that might help you in staying motivated to do well in your classes junior and senior year leading up to your applications is starting to doing a little bit of research, and maybe starting to think about what are the types of things that you could see yourself doing in the future, and how might getting into the college or the program that you want help you get there.
No, for sure. I mean, it sounds like really relating the class material to the real world and real world applications can definitely help you to stay more engaged and be motivated to put in the time on those AP exams, on the unit tests you're going to have throughout the year. And then at the same time, it sounds like just thinking about it in that real world mindset could potentially help you think of some cool projects to do outside of the classroom, maybe building something that could make for a really awesome and impressive extracurricular. What are some examples maybe that you've done or that you've seen other students do outside of school that could maybe be a lot of fun and also make for something great to include on a college application? Anything come to mind?
Yeah. Actually at my high school now, it wasn't there when I went to school, but there actually is a extracurricular program for engineering. Now, I know not everybody's interested in maybe engineering and technology, but this was kind of an extra program where students who excelled in math and science can get together and work on projects. So I know I actually went back a year or two ago and had a conversation with that teacher, and he was involved in that program, and the students were working on like a smart fridge where like when you throw your groceries, the bags of your groceries out in the trash that have barcodes on them, your trash can would scan it, and then it would give the information back to the fridge, and the fridge would figure out if you needed to order more food. So like cool little projects like that are coming out of this program where it's like, yeah, the students are good in math and science, but there are a lot of students who are good in math and science. But I think having something like that you can point to on your resume is really, really cool. for myself, I didn't necessarily have that at the time, but I think the thing that really I think made my application stand out was the fact that I talked about what math and science meant to me in terms of what I wanted to do in the future. And that had a lot to do with what this teacher was talking to me about, which is how to actually apply the principles I'm learning to maybe like a future project. So I kind of painted the future a little bit in terms of, what I wanted to do with engineering, why maybe I wasn't as interested in the past, but I showed that my junior and senior year grades and AP courses and all that were sort of leading in the direction of, wanting to really do a lot with that. So I think, going back to, like you said, the idea of how can the stuff you're working on in school apply to the real world, and maybe demonstrate that with a cool project like I was talking about.
For sure, Tom, just to go back to that example of the smart fridge, even just working on something like that, even if you don't succeed, the lessons you learn along the way and the failures you experience along the way, just indicating a passion for the goal or the idea of pursuing this endpoint, could still make for something great to include on an application. You don't actually have to build the smart fridge successfully. You can just kind of tinker around with it a bit. I mean, look at Elon Musk with SpaceX, right? He's done a half dozen launches already or something like that, but he learns things along the way, even though we're not up all the way up to Mars yet, right?
Right.
And even if you don't do it in high school, a project in high school, just having that, Tom, that you personally, just having that upward trend of suddenly having that spark that indicates your interest in these topics on a more serious level, taking those AP classes, getting better grades than you were before. That upward trend is something colleges really value as well. So lots of good insights that you shared with us. Thanks so much for that.
Cool.
I want to shift gears now and move into some stories that you might have about the worst moment you've seen or experienced in the college admissions process. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think more of a personal story for me, and it was actually kind of like a non-application. So I'll explain that a little bit. And it was, just about around this time where I was starting to get a little bit of confidence that I might have a chance of, getting into some good engineering programs. My teachers were encouraging me. I was starting to do better in school. My parents were encouraging me. But I specifically remember my grandfather is actually an emeritus professor at Cornell. So I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could get into the Cornell engineering program, which, at the time with my grades and my background was definitely a stretch for me. But I started talking about that in class with my friends, and, my friends were kind of, smart asses sometimes, but they basically told me, like, dude, with your SAT scores and your grades, you have no shot in the world of ever getting into Cornell. So, me being the impressionable teenager that I was, I took that to heart, and it was kind of disheartening. And I think the lesson for me there was, like, at the time, I thought that was like the definitive, you can't get into Cornell feedback that I was getting from my friends. But in reality, none of my friends had ever applied to an Ivy League school. They had no idea what was going on. They were just, making fun of me. But because of that, I got discouraged and I didn't really reach for that. I kind of stayed within my comfort zone. I applied to some, top 25 schools like Maryland, but I didn't really reach for that, Ivy League school or top 10 engineering program because I didn't think it was possible. But, looking back on it, if I had really focused on, putting together a good application, doing some cool projects, focusing on sort of my upward trend with grades and APs and everything, I could have had a shot. But that was kind of my bad experience was, I didn't even try in the first place because I got discouraged when in reality, I shouldn't have even been listening to my friends in the first place. So that's my story.
There's definitely some really valuable nuggets there. I mean, your peer group can be a big influence and your friends can be a big influence, but they don't necessarily know what they're talking about sometimes. If you think you have a shot, if you have the grades or the test scores, or even aside from that, if you have something cool you've done outside of school that you think could strengthen your application. Finding a mentor who believes in you and can help you package that for an application to a school that might otherwise be a reach. Hey, you never know. A lot of schools are on the Common Application. It's not necessarily that much more effort to apply to one or even a couple more additional schools that maybe aren't that likely, but why not? Who knows, right? Contrasting it, your friends, to the mentor who kind of helped you get on the path with the science and the engineering and set you on the path to success. Now you've got a really successful website where you're sharing lots of tips to help other students down the line with their studying. It sounds like you've really turned things around and gotten things on that upward trend for yourself, as well as for lots of other students who are following your advice along the way. I want to shift gears now, Tom, and move into my favorite part of the interview, which is the lightning round. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. You give me some rapid fire responses. Are you ready?
Sure.
Great. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
I would say a lot of times, especially this is kind of like an American thing, is we focus on our weaknesses. But I think the best thing that you can do as a student applying to a school is to really highlight your strengths. So you don't need to, if you have bad grades in a certain area, or if you haven't taken very many high-level classes in science or math or whatever major you're trying to get into, instead of trying to explain away why you haven't done those things, just focus on what you are really good at and focus on creating a story around that. I think that was the biggest thing that I learned during the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too many students sometimes just focus on their weaknesses and feel like they want to explain away anything bad that may have happened. And while there's a place for that, definitely think about your strengths and emphasizing those as well. That's such great advice. Thank you, Tom.
Great.
Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to success?
I think doing things that interest you on a weekly and a daily basis is going to get you a lot further than trying to do everything that you can to get in. So I think there's a lot of emphasis that gets placed on doing as many extracurriculars as you can, taking the hardest courses that you can, doing all the preparation for the SAT and everything like that. I think instead, probably the best habit that you can get in, you can work into your routine, is to spend a little bit of time each day on that one project or thing or class that really interests you, and put in the time on that, because the results that will accumulate, if you do that every day for the whole school year for all of junior year, you're going to have, a lot of results to show versus, putting your energy in all these different areas that everyone else is doing anyway.
Well, absolutely. Focusing on what you really care about and excelling in that. Also, I love the idea that you brought up of daily habits. There are so many daily habits or habits that you perform regularly that can really help to ground you and center you and kind of pave the way to make everything else possible. So Great advice there, Tom. Thank you for that.
And actually, just as a quick follow-up to that, I'll just highlight when I was in school, and like I said, I had that math teacher that I really liked. I put in work like almost every day for the couple of months leading up to the math and physics AP exams. And I was in AP biology at the same time. And I basically, I didn't like biology. I didn't like the teacher, and I didn't spend much time on it. And I completely bombed the exam. I got a B in the class. I barely got by, but I totally aced my math courses and my physics courses, got 5s on the AP exams. And I think that's what really helped my application for the engineering school. So that's kind of an example of that habit that I put in action.
Well, absolutely. Great real world example right there. What's one book that you believe no college applicant should be without?
One book that I would recommend for any student, not even, through your whole career in high school, would be What Smart Students Know by Adam Robinson. That is one of my favorite books. I use the principles that he talks about in that book all the time when I tutor students in high school and college. And in that book, not only does he talk about how to do well on exams and get good grades and get into college, but also sort of provides a framework for lifelong learning that will benefit you into college as well.
Well, that's a great book. I've actually seen it in the past, but it's a great reminder there. I'll link to it in the show notes as well. Thank you.
Great.
What are you up to these days? What's next for you, Tom?
So, like I said, I work with students one-on-one through my tutoring, but then I also have the site WTFprofessor.com, where I focus on helping math, science, and engineering students who are now in college figure out how to get the most out of their courses, get the grades that they want, and do it in less time than they would otherwise. Actually, right now I have a free 5-day email course that I'm offering for anybody who signs up that kind of introduces you to the learning techniques that I've put together with the students that I work with and that I used when I was in college studying mechanical engineering and philosophy. And that if you sign up, you'll get 1 email per day. It'll take you through not only how to sort of optimize your schedule and put in some good learning habits, but the actual this is how you take notes. This is the best way to prepare for exams, do homework problems. It'll take you through all that and introduce a good introduction to the process of becoming a better learner.
Great. And how can folks sign up for that email course and check out your website?
If you just go to WTFprofessor.com, the link to sign up for the course is right on the homepage.
All right, great, Tom. We'll link to it in the show notes. Sounds like a great resource there. Thank you so much for joining us. You gave lots of valuable advice, and I'm sure our listeners are really going to appreciate it. So thanks again for doing this, Tom. We'll have to have you back sometime.
Happy to be here.
All right, take care.
Thanks.